We're going to start today by looking at some trigonometry. And specifically, we're going to focus on what trigonometry is, and it's the study of how sides and angles in triangles are related, particularly as they're related by different ratios. So we're focusing right now in this unit on right angle trigonometry, and that means that one of the triangles, or that one of the angles in the triangle is 90 degrees. And that means that we can focus on some very specific relationships between those three different angles. So first thing that we need to understand is how to properly name the sides of a right angle triangle. So the sides of a right angle triangle are always categorized based on the position relative to one of the non-right angle triangles. So for example, if I raise this up a little bit, in this particular triangle, let's say that this is my angle. If that's my angle, then what's really important for us to be aware of is that we can actually identify those three triangles. And there's three sides. One is called the hypotenuse, and we already know that from our Pythagorean theorem. So we call this the hypotenuse, and I'm just going to label that as H. So H represents the hypotenuse. Because everything is relative to the angle that's in question, the side that is across from the angle that we know or that we're trying to find out, the side that is across from it, we call that the opposite. So I'm going to label that with an O. And that therefore means that the third side must therefore be the adjacent. So again, in this situation where we have the angle being right here in the bottom left-hand corner of the triangle, this triangle is labeled HOA across. And you always want to label your HOA. Now, if we change where that angle is, that's also going to change the nature of how this triangle is going to be named. So let's say here on the triangle on the right-hand side, if we want to know that angle, so the angle that is in the upper top piece, if that is now the angle that's in question that we're trying to figure out, what's really important is that we have to rename this triangle, the HOA for this triangle, relative to this angle up here. Okay, so again, the side that is across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. Now, however, the opposite side is down here, because in this case, the side that is across from the angle in question is our opposite side, and that means that in the triangle on the right, the opposite is actually on the bottom. And therefore, the acute side is up at the top. So let's go through and label two more triangles that we have here in question. We're going to follow the same principle with our HOA. So in this instance, we know that we're actually trying to figure out the angle that's right here. Okay, so X is the angle in question. We know that this is a right angle triangle because it's got this square thing. It shows us that square thing in the bottom right left-hand corner there. So we have to label the HOA. We have to identify our hypotenuse, our opposite, and our adjacent side. So we can always start with our hypotenuse. That should be the first thing we do. So our hypotenuse is across from that right angle triangle. Our opposite side is the side length that is across from the angle that we either have or that we're looking for. So in this case, we are trying to figure out what angle X is. So the side that is across from angle X, that is our opposite side. And therefore, the third side must therefore be our adjacent side. Okay. Let me try that again. Must be our adjacent side. Now, if we look at example B, again, this is very similar to the example that's above. We now know that the angle in question that we're given is up at the top. Okay, and so first thing we need to do is label our HOA. So we're going to label our hypotenuse. So our hypotenuse is always directly across from that 90-degree angle. So that's our hypotenuse. We want to label our opposite, which is across from the angle in question. So our opposite is down there. And finally, we have our adjacent side. So again, the key thing here in terms of labeling triangles is always that you identify first and foremost the hypotenuse, then the opposite, then the adjacent. Okay, so the hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, The opposite is always the side length across from the angle in question, and the adjacent is the third remaining side. So label it HOA.